Now we have our two pieces. I don't know, I'll call these chopped off triangles. And we're going to sew these two pieces together. And if you think of it as, if you look at it this way, this is just another Y seam, but that the squares will go into on both sides. So this side and this side down here will have a square. So it's really a Y seam. This straight seam that we're going to sew first will have markings on both ends. So this end and that end, because we have two squares to set in. And we also need to match our centers. This is our center star that we need to match. So let's fold these over, and we're going to start in the center. Now sometimes these centers are easy to match up, and sometimes I have to take several tries. So we'll try the first one. We're going to look right here where this seam, horizontal seam, intersects this diagonal seam. So let's start by putting our pin there. And then we're going to turn it over and see that if it lands right in the center of these. And this one I can see it's over, it's not really in the ditch, it's touching this fabric here, and we want it in the ditch right here because it's pressed this way. So let's try to get it right here in the ditch. Let's try that again. So there, I'm happy with it right there. And you'll see you're really only going through one layer of fabric, so you can really feel it in when you put the pin through there. I know that's difficult to see. And now this one's going to be easier. We can just simply find where we want to put it, which is right here. And it's in the ditch of this one right here, and we're going through this one piece of fabric right here. So let's do that. And then we line up the top edges, and we make sure our pin is perpendicular. And you'll see that all of this seam allowance is pressed toward the right, and all of this is towards the left. So you try to nestle those in, keep the pin straight, and keep everything lined up across here. And let's put the pin in. Now we'll go to this side over here, and here we have our markings, and our markings over here, we're going to match those. Put the pin in. And here we have a seam that interlocks, or if it doesn't interlock, you know how to match them. Going to put a pin here. And the same thing on this side. These seams interlock. And then finally match these markings. Sometimes you can see these markings through the fabric. Usually this last center seam is where you find yourself having to ease in a little bit. Now, easing in does not mean stretching. You don't want to, if you have to stretch the heck out of it, then something's wrong. But easing is a different story. You just make sure everything lines up right. So now I'm going to stitch from this marking through here. When I get to this middle, all this bulk in the middle, I'm going to put my needle. I'm going to make sure my needle lands right here where that pin goes into the fabric, and maybe just slightly to the outside, and then stitch to this end too. So we stitch from marking to marking, and we pay attention here to the middle and then to this other marking. I'll stitch this and then come back. Here is the seam I just stitched. I started at this marking, came through to the center, and then went to the other marking. And I've already taken a peek. In the center I'm going to redo. So let me show you. This is my seam across here, and you can see that it's a little bit over. I'm probably, I guess, about maybe 1/8 of an inch over. So I'm going to rip out about 1 inch on either side, inch and a half on either side, and I'm going to try to scooch that over and redo that, because I'm not happy with that, but if you're happy with it, with something, then that's fine. So I'm going to do this over again. Okay, I ended up doing it 2 more times, and my rule is if I can't get it perfect or nearly perfect by the 3rd time, I don't try anymore. So I got it closer, and I'm not going to obsess about it. It's nice. It'll look very pretty. Now let me show you how we're going to get this center flat. Right now there's a big lump here, especially on this side. So let's look at it close. And here is the line we just stitched, and we're looking at these stitches here that go straight up, and we're going to remove those stitches. Now these are a little bit harder to remove because they're kind of hidden under all that fabric. So there's that. And then flip it over and find the same one on this side. There's a lot of extra threads here. Pull out the bottom one and then pull out the rest of them. And then take those all off. And we're going to see there might be another hidden one inside. Sometimes they are. And if we open this up, let's look at our seams to see where they're pressed, and they're going in this direction. So this one will go up like this, and this one will go down like this. And then you put your finger in the center, and if you start opening it up, you might get a little 8-point star right there in the very center. So here's one little star. He looks like he's hung up a little bit. There's a couple of them there, and there's some there. So it's a little wonky, but you get the idea. And if you put your finger on there, it's really nice and flat, and there's hardly no bulk there at all. We're not going to press these 2 seams yet until we set in our last 2 squares. And these are done the same way. You'll start here, and we've already done the straight line, so do your right hand side and your left hand side. So this will be folded like this, and then fold this over. It's the same thing you've been doing for all the others. So go ahead and put those last 2 squares in, and we'll come back and finish the block. All right, now here is the finished star. I could use a little more pressing with a hotter iron. My iron is acting up today. But go ahead and press your remaining seams, your 2 seams here, and then your corner squares. Press those seams towards the diamonds, and these press in the direction they need to go. And the back, the center of the star, give your little 8-pointed star a final pressing, and that's a pretty good 8-pointed star. My success rate's probably about 75% on these things. Sometimes I get only 6. I don't know why, but the big thing is to make sure that you have a nice flat surface right there. Now we have 2 of these blocks, 2 blocks, and I'm going to show you how to match these points here, so when you sew a block to another block, you don't lose your points on either side. And you've actually been doing this all along, so we'll just go through and just go over this. You don't have to mark these. What you do is you're going to put your pin in the ditch, and we're going to guess at 1/4 of an inch right now and look at it. And so we have it here coming out right at that point of the star on this one. And then here we can find the ditch of this one and put that right in the ditch. And put that right in the ditch of that star. and then make the pin perpendicular, and then put the pin in and make sure that your edges are even. Here, most of the time, you're going to have all of this bulk pressed in one direction. And if that bothers you, then you might want to repress some of these corner squares. It never has bothered me. I just give it a good pressing and it holds. And then just do the ends, pin the ends, and pin this one. Guess your 1/4 of an inch till you can check it. That's close. And then put it right at the very tip of that other point, and then make the pin perpendicular and match the tops, and then pin the side as you have been doing all along. And when you stitch this, you'll start here on one end and just make sure your sides and your tops match, and then concentrate on coming to this other intersection here, and where your pin goes into the fabric, that's where you want your needle to stitch. And then go from this point to this point, same thing, where your needle hits the fabric, that's where your pin hits the fabric, that's where your needle should go in. And then the last part. Now I finished stitching the seam together and I pressed towards this darker fabric. And let's check the points. So our points lined up pretty well, and I'm pretty happy with those. I wanted to thank you for taking this class, and please check out the other classes I have available at quiltnotes.com. If you have any questions or comments or suggestions, you can contact me via the contact form on the website, quiltnotes.com. Thank you very much.